Hello. If you want to support us here at The Contemporary Gentleman, you can buy into our Spy series, links below. And depending on when this was recorded, we may or may not have an Instagram and or Patreon. If we do, links are below. Cheers. James Donaldson here, and I'm bringing you a video on the CGS Hyperion QD762. Let's just call it the Hyperion. Anyway, as always in these videos, all the items you see in front of you are brought to you by a third party, with the exception of the Hager watch when you see that. And then of course with that, I will say in this video I did actually talk to an engineer at CGS to kind of ask some questions and particulars and things like that, and they did send me a plethora of information. So I kind of cherry picked, not in a like cut out context kind of way, but I kind of focused up on the information that would be most relevant in this video and gave that to you, and I'll pretty much tell you when it is I'm working off those notes. And of course the rest of it is all my interaction with this can over time. So if you're interested in learning more about my view and kind of how I look at things with the Hyperion, stay tuned. Alright, so jumping into the meat and potatoes, something I want to cover, and this applies to a lot of stuff that I cover on this channel actually, is many products, and oftentimes good ones, don't always show their value right away. And what I mean by that is sometimes when you pick something up and you look at it, you can't necessarily see right off the bat the benefits or what it does and how it does it. And so the way this can works, and I don't have any of the fancy footage, I don't like to rip it off, so I'm damn sure wasn't going to cut this can in half, but basically it has two chambers. It has an outer chamber that is not really baffled, and then part way down, well, the gas enters the blast baffle, and then some of it vents to the outer chamber, which is not baffled. And then the rest of it goes through the inner baffle, or inner chamber, which is baffled. And then about 2/3 of the way forward, there's an opening between the two, and then gas can kind of be turbulent and experience itself, and gas is reintroduced from the outside to the inside, and some gas, of course, shoots off to the end of the chamber up here, where it, of course, comes back and out later, because pressure and science and shit. So anyway, of course, the rest of this on the inner chamber is vented. Now, all this is possible really through 3D printing. I understand there's a first version of this. I don't know if it was as complex or anything, but I know that you really can't achieve all that without what's called additive manufacturing, DMLS, 3D printing, all that. And there are different types of 3D printing, DMLS being one of the types. And this is, I think, slightly a different type. But we don't have to get in the weeds on that in this video. But my point is that this can does a whole lot, and you don't even realize it until you're using it. And with some products like that, you also don't always realize what all they're doing for you until you take them to the end of their lifetime. But thus far, understanding all the things it's doing for you, all just while it does it, and doesn't really involve you at all, that's pretty cool. So I do like projects like that. Now, I used this on 300 Blackout primarily. I used it on 308 Winchester a little bit, and 6.5 Creedmoor. So let's get into kind of construction. So construction, as I said, is titanium material. It's a whole different level of titanium, and it is DMLS, which is direct metal laser sintering, additive manufacturing, etc. Now, CGS titanium silencers also have a proprietary heat treatment applied, which further increases strength and hardness of the material. All CGS 3D printed silencers are internally coated with a hexagonal boron nitride, S-line in parentheses, which decreases friction, increases surface hardness, and prevents fouling from sticking in the first place, which eliminates the need to clean because fouling can't easily stick to the internal geometry. Though CGS suppressors can still be cleaned if required. The internal coating also minimizes titanium white sparking depending on cartridge and barrel length, which is really, when it comes to the titanium sparking that you get from a can that's made out of titanium, it's also very dependent on a lot of factors too, just like it's saying there. So with the coating or not, it is dependent. I'd say most titanium silencers are going to do it. As an example, you'll see more sparking with a 10.5 and 5.56 than you would with a subsonic 300 blackout. Well, right now I didn't shoot on 5.56, but I definitely experienced this. There's not really any sparking on 300 blackout subsonic, but like shooting the Scar, as you can see in the clips, there's definitely some sparking. But to close out that thought, though in either case, it's still less with this silencer than it is with uncoated competitor silencers. So, titanium white sparking is a separate event from the flash and cannot be controlled with a flash hider, by the way. So, doesn't really have anything to do with it. Now, titanium quality density, as I mentioned a moment ago, this is a very dense titanium and very good quality. Part of that is because it is all separated out in order to do the 3D printing with. So as far as the can specs, the can is above average in length at 9.5 inches. That is pretty big for a suppressor. I would say more common sizing being anywhere kind of between, well, at least for a rifle, kind of being around for 308, 7 inches, and then for 5.56 you're probably seeing 5 to 6 inches a little more often. Now diameter is pretty average actually at 1.75. It's a little on the bigger end. A lot of them are more around 1.5 inches, but 3/4 not unheard of, and I would say it's honestly a good size because you're running it on a rifle. You're probably not losing a sight picture or anything like that, and so you know, I think it's good to use up that space that's there. Now weight, it's light for its size for sure, and I would say kind of average overall. So 15.1 ounces. What I mean by that is a lot of cans are in the 15.1 ounce range. I think I talked about the Gemtech one other video, and it's around 16 ounces or something. So being at 15.1 ounces for a 9.5 inch can is pretty good. It's impressive. Now the cost, I want to say fairly average, and I'm saying that for a can of this quality. I know some people are going to jump in, well, the silencer code this, or the Banish 30, or whatever. I'm not talking shit on any of those cans. I'm sure they're great cans, but the point is that like this is your next level can. It's a very serious can. It was made for a contract. It's duty. You know, not that you can't beat the shit out of your Omega 30, but this is just on another level. And again, I'm not talking ill about your Omega 30. There's definitely qualities it has. They're better than this, for instance, length. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. Now, overall design, it has a removable front end cap, and of course no welds because it's 3D printed. And then nearly 100% of strikes happen at the end cap, and that is why it is removable. Other than that, the whole thing is one piece, and I love that. As nice as it is to be able to change out the backing, it's also super nice just to have a simple one-piece can, thread it onto a barrel, and be done with it. No attachments, no QD mounts, no nothing. It is one piece. And, I mean, I'm never going to remove this front thing. At some point it's probably going to get itself carbon locked or welded on there anyway, one way or another. So, love the one-piece design. Now, it also has a very symmetrical design, meaning the blast chamber especially, but the way everything flows. It was not made for civilians. It was made for, and they also have basically, guarantee you can send it back, but they have had no military or civilian users send this back for any kind of service whatsoever. So I think that's pretty huge. Yeah. Now, all current production CGS rifle silencers, so this is as of, when those notes were made in 2022, they're classified as a precision rifle silencer due to the symmetrical design. So it's kind of noteworthy, and they do really great on precision stuff. I'll throw in, just for the sake of it, a picture of some shooting I did versus the Gemtech 1. It's on a 6.5 Creedmoor. Understand that, one, it's not a precision rifle, and two, I'm not a precision shooter. So don't entirely judge the group spacing on the can, or even the rifle for that matter. But do be aware that it's a decent group. So now there's also point of impact shift is extremely minimal. You can, by making the interior asymmetrical, you can kind of get rid of point of impact shift in many cases. Again, a lot of other variables in there, but because of the structure and the rating they wanted and all that, the symmetrical design was the way to go. Now, going back to point of impact shift, that does allow for a slight point of impact shift, although it's extremely minimal. And on-off repeatability is excellent, meaning that when you shoot through the can, take the can off, put the can back on, shoot again, you're pretty much going to get the same result. Now, those kind of results, of course, get magnified the farther away you shoot. So if you're judging that claim at 1,500 yards, you're going to notice a shift more than you will at 100. So let's just consider that. Something else to throw in there is that asymmetrical design will increase sound reduction, but it is at the cost of some minor but very measurable precision and accuracy variances at long range. Now, I'll also say that because of the design, it's very good at controlling the heat and pressure distribution, which is the goal. And I have noticed that this can does not heat up as fast as some other cans, and it is titanium. What you should understand about that is titanium is not as dense as something like Inconel or cobalt slash stellite. So those metals being denser, takes longer for the heat to work its way through those molecules. Therefore, it takes longer for that can to heat up. Of course, it takes longer for it to cool down as well. Titanium heats up kind of fast, but this can, because of the way it channels all that heat and pressure, it doesn't heat up as fast as, say, like my Gemtech 1, which a little bit you could say, okay, well, this is longer. Okay, sure. But still, I think you should consider how this can manages everything flowing through it, and understand that it is just going to run cooler. Plus, paired with an MCX here, which is also a system that runs pretty cool as far as those go. It's a good setup to have, and I like it quite a lot. Last bit to say about the manufacturing is the manufacturing environment is very controlled, temperature controlled when they're with their CNC machine or their printers and all that. And of course, it produces next level consistency, which is what you want when you want to guarantee every suppressor coming off your line is going to do or is going to perform as advertised. So let's get into sound. It's awesome, right? It's great. Suppressors are supposed to silence things. Sometimes they don't do as well, or sometimes some aren't even hearing safe, technically. But we accept that because they do other things well, whether it's flash reduction or they're resilient or both of those things or whatever. But this can does really great. It's very resilient and it is very quiet. Now, to the ear, incredibly good. Wasn't so good on my 6.5, but especially when compared to the Gemtech 1 I run on that gun. But it was noticeably quieter. But also, when you're working with those bigger calibers, sometimes I think you look at something like Pew Science, and you're going to see numbers that are going to prove that it is safer for your ears than another one, even if you can't hear it. Now, all that said, the difference was extremely noticeable on my 300 Blackout. This can just, like, I got this intending to just hunt with it and keep the one on my MCX. and the reverse is happening. Not only because of the taper threads, which we'll talk about, but just the sound performance is that good that I'm like, this is it for the 300 blackout. And the sound performance wasn't huge enough that I go ahead and use it on both, which I could do. But part of that too has to do with the threads, which we'll talk about. So yeah, sound attenuation, top notch. Definitely recommend. Just on that alone. Now the gas flow, I've kind of mentioned it already, but it is conducive for a gun that is gassy like an MCX. So if you kind of have a gun, like, or maybe even a SCAR, a lot of piston guns, it's not going to screw your system as much as far as how it manages everything. Now there's a lot of other variables in there, but I guess I wanted to imply that it was a little more gas friendly than other cans. Is it, anywhere near like a Huxworks? No, but do keep it on your radar as far as that. Kind of a pro. Flash reduction, I mean, I didn't shoot it much at night, kind of in dimly lit situations, and I mean, yeah, it reduces the flash. It's got basically its own double ecosystem in here. I'd say the titanium coating works as far as the sparking, but I mean, it still happens, right? So, but don't buy this can being like, oh, my priority is flash suppression, this is the one. No, it's not. Definitely not. You're going to want to look at something else. But, it is doing it. So I guess that's what I'd say. And kind of going back to gas flow, if you need something that has just utmost gas flow, I would look into a Huxworks or a CAT. I can't just straight up recommend them because I haven't even shot either of them, but I've gotten familiar with them. Those are good options to at least consider. Now the outer surface grip, this is something I like to address on especially rifle suppressors. I like that it's got some texture to it. You can grab on, you can turn, all that. I like that the way the edges are cut, these down here are one way, and then these up here a different way. So kind of more conducive for threading something off and on the different directions. So that's nice. And of course, as always, it's going to add a little bit of surface area for a little more heat sinking. So that's nice. Going into caveats and variables, repeatability POI Shift. I'm going to throw that target up here again. There was some POI shift, but really not much. And it was roughly less than an inch to the 6 o'clock, is what I would say, which is kind of what CGS says, is if there's going to be POI shift, to the 6 o'clock. Caveat to that, compare it with the Gemtech 1 POI shift, it's, as you can see, different. Mounting, thread only, again, love it. The QD is a reference to like the military requirements and some kind of jargon. I can't totally understand. It wasn't completely clear to me why they called it the Hyperion QD 762, but even though it's threaded, but it is. Now, kind of with the mounting and the threading, the taper. So all barrels should be tapers. I'm going to start with that. So this is limited because it's got a taper, so you need an adapter. Now, all barrels should just be tapered for a couple of reasons. One, helps with concentric alignment. It's a pretty big deal. So having it on there, the MCX barrel has the taper, so it's good to go. Now, so when you mate them together, it is a match made in heaven. Also, that taper, the way the metal kind of comes together from the can to the barrel, this can doesn't screw off. Like, people, including myself, often worry about, okay, the can's going to thread off, even on rifle, even though it's worse on pistol, but still happens on rifle too. I mean, these things, I have to give it some love to unthread it, which is good. And it also doesn't weld on there. Of course, I break it off there from time to time anyway, to kind of help not allow that, but I haven't dumped 2,000 rounds for it and then let it sit forever. So, but yeah, makes it. So the adapter, there's two of them, basically one tap by 28 and the other one. They'll probably make some more, maybe they have by now already, I didn't check. But, you know, basically if you have a 90-degree shoulder, it adapts it to the taper. Now what I would recommend, honestly, because the taper is, you know, I'm such a believer in the taper, just have your barrel machined to accept this can. Also because it grabs the threads so well, it didn't matter how hard I put on their adapter onto that 6.5 Creedmoor, this can pull the adapter off every time because they're getting a much more positive lock than the 90-degree shoulder, which is yet again another reason to appreciate the taper and how it works. So again, I would just have your gun machined. The 6.5 actually getting rid of, so that's why I didn't bother with it. But if I was going to keep it, I would absolutely have a machine for that. So length and weight, just kind of bring that part home. The lightness reduces the impact of how long it is. It's a very wieldy suppressor, which is not true of all large suppressors like this. And then putting it on like a 9-inch barrel, or even if I ever went to a 6.75, it's just manageable gun, you know. 9-inch barrel plus 9-inch can, well, 9.5-inch can, so you're looking at 18.5 inches overall kind of barrel length. Pretty manageable, especially when you throw it in one of these where you can really grip up and around the suppressor. Of course, you got to be careful because this is thick and it fills up a lot of this, and you can, sometimes my skin pushes through and I can feel the can, so something to be aware of. Now, what's it useful for? I'd say definitely competition and bench rest shooting for sure. It is good on an SBR. Would I throw this on the end of a 16-inch 300 blackout? I don't know, because it is so big. But when you're putting it on a shoulder barrel or you're putting it on a gun that you're not going to move around with, that's a pretty good setup. Walking around the woods with this on a 6.5 Creedmoor was a little more challenging, just because like raising it up and stuff, you got all this extra length to an already long gun. So you've got that. Now, is it better for hunting than it is not good for hunting? I mean, it suppresses really well. So if you want to use it for hunting, or you just sit in a blind, it's probably fine for that. But just don't think you're going to throw it on the end of like a shorter gun, you know, like a 30-30, and go walking around in the brush. I mean, you can. It's America, it's a free country, but if you're buying a silencer for that use, this is not the one. If you want a really good silencer that can fill that role, this would still be one to consider, I would say. So for my application, I've already kind of talked about using this on my 300 blackout versus like a hunting rifle like 6.5. Some other things to consider: if I got a scar, I would probably run the 1 on it, because 1, you can get a scarburator or discarder, those gas adjustment things, so you can make up for the lack of gas flow that the 1 has versus this. But also the 1 is just a little bit shorter, and so being able to take advantage of that on something like a scar that you may be kind of running and gunning, it's just going to be a little easier geometrically. But again, if you just want 130 cal can, you want it to be really good performance, you know, and you have a scar, it's not going to be into the world to put it on there. Again, I would machine that barrel though, for the taper. So, and of course, if I didn't get the gas adjustment, the 1 is going to beat up a scar more than this would. But now, the close. In the end, this is a fantastic silencer, as long as you understand what its strengths and weaknesses are. Weaknesses really only being size, and strengths being everything else. Do you want this on the end of your 20-inch M16 doing CQB? No, absolutely not. Do you want this on your precision rifle or 300 blackout SBR and everything in between? Absolutely. As I apply this can in ways that make sense, this is one of my favorite cans and will likely remain so for years to come. If you are on the fence with this can and you plan to apply it in accordance with my recommendations, I encourage you to get it. You won't be disappointed. This has been James Donaldson with the Contemporary Gentleman, and until next time, keep your composure.